Hello, I'm Gary Quinn, and welcome to Ready, Set, Live. My guest is an actress, Tony-nominated actress, writer, producer, singer, dancer. She's a brilliant person, and she's in studio, actually via Zoom. My friend, Jonelle Allen. Welcome, Jonelle.
Oh, hello, Gary. It is so good to see you. It's sort of funny doing this because you and I have spent so many years being friends and working colleagues and sharing so many things that it seems sort of funny now that I have to sort of filter, because a lot of the stuff that we say we really shouldn't be talking about. Like, you know
Well,
what
we
I
had
mean.
such a great time, and it was such a blessing to be able to work with you for 10 years. But, you know, I've never forgot the connection. I mean, we still have it, no matter
Yes.
how many years we don't see each other. And I'll never
Yes.
forget you walking at the Christmas party that I had, and I didn't know who you were. And you walked in with Richard, and
Yeah.
you walked through the living room, and I chased you to the kitchen, and I didn't know. I said, whoever you are, I want to represent you. You had such a sparkle energy. I'll never forget that moment. And then,
I won't either, because at first when you're like, because I wasn't really like invited to the party. It was sort of like when you were like coming after me, it was sort of like, oh, is he going to kick me out? So, because it's Hollywood. So, and I wasn't on the list, but that was a great evening, and then it became a wonderful kind of a very synchronistic
connection.
relationship and
Correct.
connection. And the thing is that, towards when we were making our transitions, as you were, heading into the things that you're doing now, which you were always doing, and I was going, in my other directions on my journey. But I would always say to you, give me vibes, give me
Correct.
vibes,
But
give me vibes. So there was a part of me that felt, I really helped push him
You
right
did.
over that edge to go into that direction.
You did, because you always told me you need to do this, because I remember when you were driving out to the ranch, I kept saying strawberries, and you go, I just bought some. and so, thank you, because I think every moment that we have with people is a lesson and a journey, but a karmic energy to be with each other. And it was thank you so much for
it's true, because we as people, we weave in and out of that on that divine path. And sometimes yeah, you can feel a little sad that one thing has changed, but it has to.
Yeah. Well, in some
It's like
ways,
that wonderful song, I guess, I forget who sang it, and I'm sure someone will say, oh, it was so-and-so. Everything must change. Nothing
correct.
stays the same.
Correct.
Correct. And it's true. But when you're connected with people, you weave in, you weave out, and they come back when they're supposed to. It's rather wonderful.
Well,
I think
it's
that
divine,
whole kind
divine synchronicity.
That's right. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And one has to just rely and really trust their inner GPS, which I call God power, God power, and serenity.
Correct.
So to trust your inner GPS.
Oh, I love
and to
that.
know that you're protected and everything's okay.
Cool.
Everything's okay, even if it may not seem outside of yourself. Like, oh, what is this? But it's like, no, go within, and more is always revealed. And it's really quite fascinating. It's really quite fascinating.
Your history is so amazing, because, growing up in Sugar Hill, and coming from Harlem, but you were, Harlem was a great growth period for many artists, and you at 13 performed at the Apollo Theater, 7 shows a day. I mean, what was that like as a 13-year-old, you know?
Well, the thing is that we can backtrack it a little more. At the age of 3 years old, I went to the Fred Astaire Dance Studio up on 150 Amsterdam Avenue, because that's, the moms took the little kids to the dancing school, not so much because the kids wanted to dance, but that was a way that they could congregate and gossip and do whatever. And so I was 3 years old, and I would always dance in front of the television and all of that stuff. I mean, of course, I had identity problems because at that time, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, they had the I Love Lucy show. And before the show, they had these two little cartoon characters, which was Lucy and Desi, dancing and stuff. And I always thought I was the little Lucille Ball cartoon character. I was like, that's me. And I'd be dancing, and I would do like the whole dance that those little cartoon characters were doing before the actual episode of I Love Lucy would come on. And so when I got a chance to go, to the dance school, I'm up there dancing. I'm like 3 years old, and maybe I was 4 by then. And they put me center stage, and there was a talent scout who came from a show. It was called, and it sounds like, excuse the expression, a porn show. It's called The Mary Mailman. And the Mary Mailman was Ray Heatherton, and his daughter was someone named Joey Heatherton. And if you don't know who that is, Google her. Anyway, Ray Heatherton had the Mary Mailman show. And so every little, local dance studio would have an opportunity to be on the Mary Mailman and do their little number. And so when my dancing school, the Fred Astaire Dance Studio, was on the Mary Mailman, I, did my thing and upstaged all the other little kids, of course. And so I got this call from this talent agent for kids. And her name was Rita Newton. And she said to my mother, the Mary Mailman, they like this kid. So can she do, so I started doing one afternooners with the Mary Mailman. I would show up, and he'd do his little, I'm the Mary Mailman. And then I'd do a little tap dance or do whatever and blah, blah, blah. But so I did that for a minute. And then and then what happened was I had this, it was, I guess it was a racial shock, really. The Mary Mailman I'm standing in the wings getting ready to go on in my little dress, and I feel this little hand, and it was very cold and weird. And I looked down, and it was a little chimpanzee dressed just like me. I swear to you. And I was like, so I lost my gig.
Wow.
And I guess that one, but at that time I didn't think anything about it. But now, of course, I could write a book.
Right.
But that talent agent, Mrs. Rita Newton, that's when she contacted after seeing me on the Mary Mailman.
Wow.
And they were doing a revival at City Center of Wisteria Trees with Helen Hayes.
Right.
And Helen Hayes was a great, person. And she was, there was a character. It was in Wisteria Trees was Josh Logan's Americanization of Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard. And it takes place in the South. And so I went in to audition for it, and I was 5. And so the director, who was John Stick, said, can you read? And I was like, yes, I can read. And he said, okay, well, you're going to say this line. You see it? I said, yes. You're going to say this line. And then before you say it, you're going to wait. And I don't know where it came from. I just said, oh, you mean take a beat? And all of a sudden I heard there was this laughter in the wings, and then in walks Helen Hayes and just was like, And meanwhile, I think I got the role because Helen Hayes was about 4 feet tall. And at that time, I was like 3 feet tall, a tiny woman. And so Helen Hayes was like, okay, she's cast. And so I was, put in the show. I did the show. And in that cast was Walter Matthau, Ossie Davis, Cliff Robertson, Will Geer, Lois Smith, Ella Raines. I mean, it was, and I was, in a show with these people. And so coming up, then I did a lot of theater and Broadway theater when I was from the ages of 5 years old to 10.
Correct.
And in fact, one of my last Broadway shows I did as a kid was directed by Garson Kanin and starred Leo Gann and Jan Sterling, and it was called Small War on Murray Hill. And the thing that I love about being a child actor in New York is that in California, everything is around the child. They have these laws. They have to, not so with the theater, not at all. I had to know my lines like everybody else. I had to be there. There was no kind of, exceptions made for me.
Correct.
So I had to learn early on to be professional.
Correct.
And I didn't know that, but it was that kind of discipline. But because I was spoiled by theater, when I did a show when I worked with Sammy Davis Jr., I was 8 years old, and we did a takeoff of Bill Robinson and Shirley Temple on the old Walter Winchell variety show. Charlie Atkins, who went on to do a lot of choreography for Motown, Charlie Atkins was my dance teacher at that time. And that's how I got the job. And that was the first time I worked with Sammy when I was 8 years old. But Charlie's partner was a dance man called, they had a dance team called Coles and Atkins, and it was Honey Coles. Wow. And Honey Coles became my dance teacher and also like my play uncle as well. And then he also produced the shows at the Apollo Theater. At a certain point, he was producing the shows there. And so during one school break, he said, yeah, you're used to being downtown on Broadway, and yeah, you done TV, but you don't know what the real deal is. And so he put me in a show at the Apollo with this dance group called the Tommy Johnson Dancers. And on the bill it was like a comedy show, and it was during Easter, and that's why I could be there, because we were on Easter break I was going to professional children's school at that time, PCS, which is still around, which is for kids who are in the business. Anyway, so Aretha Franklin was on the bill, and I would just stand in the wings and watch her, and she wore bobby socks and would sit at the piano and play because she was a little older than me, but still a kid. Right. And Flip Wilson was the headliner. Okay. And it was a comedy show. And so all these great old comedy acts from, the 30s and 40s were in this show too. And the timing, it was great. But the thing is that when we had like this opening dance number that we did, then we had a closing dance number. And the thing is that in those kind of vaudeville houses, like the lower you are, the higher your dressing room is. And so our dressing room, the dancers' dressing rooms were way up in the crow's nest. I mean, like way, way up there in the crow's nest. So the thing is that after the first number, we would have to, I don't think we changed our clothes. And so by the time we finished our last number, and went all the way up to the crow's nest, it was time to come back down and do the first show. I mean, it was like back to back to back to back to back to back to back. It was like you were doing 9-10 shows a day. Wow. And it was like, so Honey did that for me because he was like, if you're going to do this, if you're really going to do this, you should know this side of it too. You know, you should know this side of this of that too. And I'm really grateful for that. Absolutely. Because it instilled in me that thing of whether I'm working in front of 1,000 people or one person, I still have to show up.
Correct.
And so I'm grateful for that. And then, you know, train tracks move a little further, and I'm starring on Broadway in Two Gentlemen of Verona. And Miss Hayes had told my mother when I was in that show with her when I was 5, she said, keep this kid in the theater. She has a natural gift. No, keep this child in the theater. Maybe she didn't say theater, but I'm saying that because I like theater. Keep this kid in the theater because she has a natural gift.
Right.
So the night that Two Gentlemen of Verona opened on Broadway, and after a show opens on Broadway, you go to Sardi's to wait for the reviews. And Helen Hayes had been saw the show that night.
Wow.
And so I was showing up at Sardi's, and she looked at me and she said, "You were terrific." And I said, "Miss Hayes, you may not remember me, but I was Little Miss Lucy in your revival of Wisteria Trees at the city center. And you told my mom to keep me in the theater because I have a natural gift." And without missing a beat, as she strolled off into the night, all 4 foot of her, she went, "I was right," and then just went off into the night, you know. So it was a rather...
Isn't it amazing, though, that, you know, when you were a child, you must have had some really intention of the vision for your future, because that was your intention. But I think this is what you were meant to do. You were guided. You were shown that each door was opening always.
Well, I guess, you know, hindsight's 20/20, but yes, I was always having, I would imagine I was always having that intention, because the thing is that, you know, I would be in my kitchen in our apartment, and there was like a wooden block, you know, flat kind of thing, that the place in the kitchen where I could practice my tap dancing. And I would be practicing my tap dancing, and my cat Sabu, that was his name, I named him Sabu, and my dog Caesar would be in there watching me. And then I would pretend, you know, as I'm dancing, and I'd finish and I'd say, "It's the Jonelle show, yay!" And they'd be looking at me, and I'd be, "Yes, starring Jonelle Allen with her guest, Harry Belafonte." And then I would like do a duet of singing, me and Harry Belafonte singing together, which I've never told his daughter, Sherry, who's a very good friend of mine. We did a movie together where I played her. Well, it was a vampire film. Anyway, but I would. And I'm grateful that I have a mom, or, you know, people in my family who didn't like say, "Put this kid on something. She's delusional." Yes, you know, it's like, I'm grateful that they just let me tap dance in the kitchen with my animals, putting on my show.
But you were acting as if.
That's right. So I was putting it out there, even though I didn't know I was putting it out there.
Correct.
But that was it. And I think that is an important thing, that when kids have imagination, when kids have, you know, these kinds of flights of fancy or whatever, I hopefully they have parents that will not say, "Oh, don't do that." Correct. You know, or "Don't be like that," or "Don't act like that," or whatever. Correct. That will, you know, like push down their wonder, you Correct. Know, their wonder.
It's living your authentic dream. Your authentic dream.
And I'm glad that I didn't have that. You know, I had somebody who who would just say, okay, she's in there with the animals tapping and doing her show or whatever the heck it is she's doing.
And how did you get from New York to Hollywood?
Well, um,
I know you were
as I
doing
said,
at the Amundsen.
as I said, I did Two Gentlemen of Verona in on Broadway. Well, first, to backtrack a bit, Joseph Papp, and as I tell my students, Google these names if you don't know them. Joseph Papp, who had Shakespeare in the Park in Central Park, which is still going on, opened up his first theater, indoor theater, which is still very, very lucrative and very big now, the Public Theater. He opened the Public Theater in New York. And the very first production to premiere at the Public Theater, very first time it was ever shown anywhere, was Hair. And and I got, what happened was a person who remembered me as a kid actor called and said, how old are you now? And I said, well, I'm 17. And he's like, well, Joseph Papp, and I didn't know, he says he does Shakespeare in the Park, but now he's going to be opening an indoor theater, and it's called the Public Theater, and they're going to be doing a musical called Hair. And I was like, Hair? Yeah, well, whatever, that's what they're going to be doing. And they want like young types. They want like, young kids or people like that. So can you come in and audition? And meanwhile, I hadn't auditioned for anything in a while. And so I remember I wore this really, really, really short mini dress because I could. And so I was really short mini dress, went down, and they had the auditions at the the building. It was the old Astor Library on 14th Street, and there was only one theater that it's going to be a complex, in which now it's a big complex.
Is it the one on Lafayette or 56th Street? No,
it's on 14th Street, and it's on 14th Street. And the Public Theater has many shows Hair was the very first one, but a chorus line came out of the Public Theater. Many, many, many shows, and the most recent one was Hamilton. Hamilton came out of the Public. Anyway, so the very first show was going to be Hair. And so I go, and the Ansbacher Theater was the only theater in the complex that was going to be ready to be opened. And so I remember showing up and just running around that area singing a Petula Clark song, a cappella. I know a place where the music, I was like out of breath by the time I was finished, but evidently they were okay with it, and I got cast. And so I was in the original off-Broadway production of Hair. And the interesting thing about that is when the show was first done, it had nothing, Vietnam was not really a part of it. The character Claude wanted to go to outer space, and there was no nudity in the show. That happened when it moved to Broadway, and Tom O'Horgan got involved in it, and they put nude. It was a different show, but there was a really, we had like a fun cast of people. Some I knew from professional children's school, like Paul Jabara. Paul was in it. They're just, Shelley Plimpton, who went on with it, was still in it, and Sally. And in fact, the character of Jeannie, who later they made pregnant really because Sally Eaton was pregnant, so I played Dion, and so anyway, I did, Hair there. And so when Joseph Papp, so that was my first meeting with Joseph Papp. So a few years later, I get a call saying it's Joseph Papp. And I'm like, oh, hi. He said, we're going to be doing a musical version of Shakespeare's Two Gentlemen of Verona in Central Park. And there's a role that I think you come in and so it was Shakespeare, but I was so happy to be able to audition with a Shakespeare piece because my acting teacher, David LeGrant, was really, really great with having Americans be able to do Shakespeare without trying to sound British. And so it was like, oh, great, this is a way I can do a Shakespearean monologue and use the stuff that I've learned in class. And David was great. He was my acting teacher until the day he died, which was about 3 or 4 years ago. And I got to him through Bernadette Peters because Bernadette and I were in George M together. We became like really, really, really best friends. And she studied with him, and that's how I got to David. And she studied with David, all up until the day he passed away as well. And so it was sort of cool because I could go and use my Shakespearean stuff and yada, yada, yada. And I got cast. And it was like cast as who? Oh, as Sylvia, as in who is Sylvia? What is she that all our swains commend her? So there I was, a little girl from Harlem being the princess of Milan. And so, so we were just supposed to do it for like 3 weeks, well, like 2 or 3 weeks in Central Park, in Shakespeare in the Park. And Raul Julia and Clifton Davis were the two gentlemen, and Jerry Stiller was in it. And I got to meet, and I got to be very close to him and his wife, Ann Mira, and his little son, Benjamin, would come and his daughter, Amy, would come and I would like look at them, and they were like these little kids. And, but the show opened in Central Park, and it was a huge hit. It was huge. And so it went Broadway.
You won everything. You won the New York Drama's Critics Award. You won the, the Drama Desk, the Theater World, and nominated for a Tony.
And the Outer Circle Award. I got that too. And as well. And so, so anyway, it was, a big, and so they took, it was like, then I took the national tour of it. And so I took the national tour. I did the national tour. I had the opportunity to either do the national tour, to take it to California, or to take it to England. And so I opted to go to California. And that's, to do it out here. And then when I did it out here, I got to put under contract to NBC Network.
And that's when you got Generations.
That whole thing where I was doing a whole lot of police stories, police women, pilots, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I got out here. But I would always go back to New York, though.
But you know what? I think the thing about, and anything you could, because a lot of actors, young actors, really don't study. And I think they call themselves actors. And I think that you are someone who, when I used to watch you doing these scenes on Dr. Quinn, you were so finely tuned. You were in the moment, and you could be right in character and do what you needed to do emotionally. And I don't think the bar is really high for certain people. They can't do it. And I think you're one of the few that I know. There's some, but you're built to do this. This is all you can do. And that's why you've made such an impact. And I think young actors should really look at your body of work and really look at all the dedication that it's taken, and really the connection that you have to spirit, but also the trust and the fortitude and the energy that you've put behind it. It's a trust, and you've really carved out, you're still working. And, the thing is that, you're someone that you could be opposite Meryl Streep and you can hold your own. You're that caliber, and that's what I always admired about you. And I think that will never go away. You always have that, but that's a gift. That is a gift.
Thank you. That is so, thank you so much for that. I also think that I came along at a time where it was really important to learn your craft, to be able to, even if you weren't going to, um, say, sing, if, oh, I'm not a singer, but you still take voice lessons. You take dance lessons, because the thing is that your instrument is from head to toe, not just from here to here. And so you have to be able to be fluid in that way. And so taking movement classes, taking dance classes, it's like people like Marlon Brando and James Dean and all these people. They took dance classes with Catherine Dunham. I mean, and they're not dancers, nor were they, but they were fluid, and and that's a part of that technique. And I really love to watch these, documentaries about, all of these groups or singers or whoever who are iconic now, but they paid their dues. They went out and worked in little crappy clubs in some little place to learn their craft, to learn how to perform, to learn, all of this stuff. And the thing is that, sometimes, they go on the road, they get in front of an audience to be able to perform, and sometimes we, nowadays, and I tell this to my students, nowadays you can become a virtual sensation, and it's like, oh, virtual sensation, but the thing is, put those people in front of an arena, and it's like, oh, okay. It's like you get better at what you do by doing it.
Correct.
And the thing is that I loved when Cicely Tyson would say, I'm always, and people are always discovering me. And I think that is absolutely true. But just because someone isn't in front of your face all the time, it doesn't mean they're not working. And so what, for me, what was very interesting was there was that downtime during Dr. Quinn for me, but there were things that I needed as a person, as a human being, to be able to tap into that I didn't know I had. Because before I was, yes, I knew I was a singer, dancer, actor, and I thought that was all I could be. I thought that was all I was. And so if I'm not, and when you're doing a series, and I've been very fortunate to have done 4 series thus far, and Dr. Quinn was one that, it went on, is still going on around the world. So the thing is that there was that moment of, okay, what am I going to do next? And it was that time where the universe, or whatever I choose to call it, wanted me to tap into that GPS, that wanted me to know that, yes, I sing and I dance and I act, but I never knew how to work a computer. I didn't know how to do, things that people would say, really? No, I didn't. I didn't have those kinds of day-to-day kind of practicality things that I just didn't know. And so I started doing that kind of stuff. And then I was able, because I've been in recovery, and I'm 32 years sober. At that time, I was able to
really find out who you were authentically. I think you had to go within. And,
yes.
And really, yes. I think getting sober was actually saved your life.
Well, it did in the sort of in the obvious ways. It's like, you're drinking like a pig, so that's not going to be good for you. And so that's a kind of given. But what isn't given, and that's why it's important to stay with it, because what isn't a given is those other gifts that you're given and you didn't even know you wanted them. It's, those, and for each person, it's different. Those gifts on those blessings are different for everyone. So for me to say what happened for me is what I needed, what I needed to know, what I needed to learn. And so I helped co-found the Lynn House, which is, because it's still going on, a 30-day alcohol and drug-free shelter for women, for indigent women, so that women who don't have the money to go to Betty Ford or go to wherever like that, they can get the gift of sobriety. And to have a safe place for them, and then they can be connected to other things after the 30 days. But I helped be the co-founder of that, and that was a wonderful surprise that I didn't even know I wanted to do.
What was your biggest challenge that you think you had to overcome, or hit bottom to really go within and find out, what does Jonelle have to do to really get back into her spirit and really move forward? Was there a time that was, so dark that you thought that was
yes, that it was. I look at it now, and I guess it might have seemed like it was a dark time, but it was an absolutely necessary time, because at one point, after doing this series and all of this kind of stuff, I had to file for bankruptcy. And I remember on the one day, and I had married someone for 2 minutes, whatever. Anyway, so I filed for bankruptcy. I signed those divorce papers. And my cat that I loved, I had to put down, all in the same day. So the thing is that at the time, you might think, but I had support. However, I had to begin to know that where finances or that God is my supply, is my source, and that when I'm putting my focus on things outside of myself, that it, in saying how something should look or how something should be, and if that isn't looking like that, then I'm coming from a place within me of lack. But when I go within to the living God or living spirit or force or whatever one wants to call it, but I choose to call God, to go within and begin to, do affirmative prayer and do all those kinds of things, and not to outline it, not to say, okay, it has to look like this.
Correct.
But to say, okay, let go and let God.
Correct. And it's also, I think you have to have a belief in yourself, because especially people in the creative people, they sometimes lose the way, they lose their path. And if they don't have a spiritual, let's say, core belief, it's very easy to go the wrong path.
Well, the thing is, I believe that we're all spiritual beings having a human experience.
Correct.
So but everyone, the thing that I really believe is that everyone should be allowed their journey. So if someone is saying these things to someone, and if they're not ready to hear it, then it can turn them off, or it can do whatever. But there comes that moment, whether it be clarity or whatever. In all honesty, I don't know what that is. But there comes that time you're just putting one foot in front of the other and staying in the moment, because to think ahead is like,
Correct.
or to think of what's gone before, behind, it's like, oh, or then what's gone behind. So to really, really stay in the moment. And what evolved from that for me was a whole other area, creative area, that I didn't even know I had, which started with teaching. And then I started writing shows. I was at Saddleback College, and I would direct shows there, and then create new shows and writing music. And which that manifested in me going to the Edinburgh Festival in Scotland with my one-woman show about Florence Mills and me, that I created myself. I didn't know I could write. I really didn't. There were people who told me before, like you, when I said, give me vibes, and you're like, well, you could write. And I'm like, and remember Olga?
Yes.
Yes. And she would always say, you can write. And I'd be like,
what am I going to write?
What am I going to write? But then one day I was writing.
Right.
And then I was writing, and then I started directing.
Yeah.
And then it was all of those, all of those pieces started to come together. And then I started teaching at the Young Americans College for the Performing Arts. And I could put all of those things together. And then it's like, via social media, there are people who love my work, and I didn't know it, because I wasn't. And then a man named Donald Welch, who is, who's a director, writer, producer, and does great theatrical productions in Los Angeles, but he also does films. And he just contacted me and said, I'm doing a film. He had done a show called The Divorce, and now it was going to be filmed. And he had a role for me on it. And there I was, doing that with, I was with Frida Payne, Tammy Mack from KGLH, and Tatiana Ali from The Fresh Prince, and Vanessa Bell Calloway. And it was a wonderful experience. So much so that I'm going to be doing a new film that he wrote the role for me, and it's starring Loretta Devine, and it's called Love on a Two-Way Street. I believe that's the name, and it's going to be on. I think that's the name, and if I have it wrong, it's starring Loretta Devine. I'm in it too, and it's going to be on the UMC channel. And
Right.
So we're very excited. We were supposed to do it in May, but with with what happened with COVID-19, it's been pushed back, and we'll be filming in the fall.
Excellent.
And so I'm very excited about that. But what I'm saying is that when you just say to the universe, okay, whatever, and then get yourself open to that, to be open to it. Not up here is good, but to take it from here to here.
Correct.
And that's when to really believe that everything that is happening is for your highest and greatest good, even if it may not seem like that.
Correct.
Because to me, the bankruptcy, but going through, that whole thing, because going through some of those things that I thought were absolutely like, but then to go through it, because the thing is, the only way to get over something is to go through it.
Correct.
Because sometimes, people are running away from something because they don't want to feel it, they don't want to know about it or whatever, so they're running away. But the thing is you can run away, but the thing catches up to you. It's running with you, and it catches up. So better to just say, okay, what is it that I got to learn about this one?
Correct.
Because if I don't learn the lesson, then I'll have to learn it at some point, because that's why it's there. And so sometimes it's like, okay, what is it that I have to learn from it? And it's not always, sometimes it's just, I don't call them problems. I call them growth opportunities. And sometimes those growth opportunities are more opportunistic than others,
Correct.
But just the thing is, it's just saying, okay, yes.
Yes, exactly. And that's what
I'm showing
I
up.
teach is yes. If you had to pick one word of everything that you've learned through your whole lifetime to this point, what would be the word that would say on your t-shirt, this is what I am, this is what I'm about, this is what I've learned?
Persist.
Okay. Great.
Persist.
Exactly. And
persist.
And I think there's a trust that you have to do when you persist. What's the vision for Jonelle for the future? What do you want to happen? What do you want next?
What I want is my highest and greatest good. I mean, I look at it like when I'm working out, and I for the last few years I've been doing a thing called Orange Theory, which I love. And I've got to say hello, Nicolicious. He said, when you were on another interview show, you never said my name. I'm saying it now. Orange Theory, Nicolicious. And he's adorable. Anyway, but it's like, I remember when I first started there, and I had been working out anyway, so it wasn't like I was, like, oh, this is something new for me. But I could not do the rower. I couldn't do the rower. It was just like, ugh. But I kept doing it. And then eventually I got better at it. And I got better at it. Like rowing 100 meters was like crazy. Now I can do 2,000 meters. It's like, yeah. So to me, like anything, and I'm wearing my mask. I'm wearing gloves while I'm doing it. And, I believe in that stuff.
Good.
I'm wearing my mask, but still working out. But so when one persists, because the only one you are in competition to is yourself. In this world, in the word, there is no such thing as competition. And that is a shadow that people put on themselves. They're looking at others saying, well, and that's just it. If you're constantly looking at others, there will be someone who you feel, oh, I'm better than, oh, yes, I got that again. Oh, yes, I'm working it better than that person. Or, oh gosh, look at what they're doing. Oh,
Correct.
It's like, get over that. Get over that.
Correct.
Because either you're up here or you're down there. No, just look everybody in the eye and say, I am enough.
Got it. Well, you are enough, and I am so pleased and so grateful for you to spend this time with me. I
Are
could
we
speak.
done?
It's done. We're up. Where time is up. We go another 3 hours. We'll do part 1, part 2, part 3. But I adore you. You are a gift to the world. And I had such a great lunch with you the other day, and we have to do more of it. And
With our masks.
yes, with our
We're funny
mask
with
and
our
social
masks.
distancing. And I wish you all the greatness. And I know great things are coming for you, Jonelle. And you are an energy, a gift, and full of love. And I adore you. Okay.
And I you. Mwah, mwah,
Thank
mwah,
you.
mwah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, I'm Gary Quinn.